Upcycled Tech and I decided to have a competition to see who could build the fastest budget gaming PC. The rules were simple. You can only spend $50 and the parts have to be readily available at the price you get them, meaning you can't get lucky with a good deal. It has to be replicable.
My build, as you can see, is a beautiful, beautiful gaming PC, $50. And I believe that it can rival Dyke in every way, shape, and form possible because it is in fact a laptop.
Now the Dyke budget isn't very large and I couldn't spend $50 on a single video, so all the parts I used I actually already had. The central component of this build is the HP ProDesk 400 G1. I got this one for $25 at an online auction a while back and it came with a single stick of 8GB of DDR3 memory, a 500GB hard drive, and the most important part, an i3 4130. Now the 4130 isn't as bad as it sounds, honestly. I mean, it came out a decade ago and is a dual-core CPU running in only 3.4 GHz, but it has hyperthreading, which effectively makes it a quad-core and is the only reason it's still capable. It also uses the HD 4400 integrated graphics, which are just horrible, so I needed to find a dedicated GPU. Originally, I wanted to use the FirePro V5800, but it turns out mine is dead. So I ended up using a GT635. These cards aren't very common, but do sell for around $15. It only has 2 gigs of VRAM, but it does support DirectX 12, doesn't require extra power cables, and is supported all the way up to Windows 11. It's a pretty versatile card, and honestly, its performance surprised me. You know what else surprised me? How easy it was to switch to Mint Mobile. We recently partnered with Mint Mobile, and they offer a great service that could save you money by switching to. The whole process was exceptionally easy. First, I went to their online website, selected their 3-month unlimited plan, and was emailed an activation code a few minutes later. Then I downloaded the Mint Mobile app, entered in my activation code, and scanned a QR code to add an eSIM to my personal phone. The whole process takes about 15 minutes and is exceptionally user-friendly. eSIMs are only supported on some devices, but they provide a tool that allows you to quickly check your eligibility, and if your phone doesn't have the technology, you can always order a physical SIM card. I've been using the service for about a week now, and it's been nothing short of amazing. And it makes sense. Mint Mobile offers the nation's largest 5G network with plans as low as $15 a month. Just think about the potential savings and how many low-end graphics cards you can buy with that money. If you're interested in this offer, check out mintmobile.com/Dyke. I've posted the link in the description below, and I'd like to thank Mint Mobile for partnering with the channel. Genuinely, this is the best experience I've ever had with a mobile network provider, and I'd recommend checking them out.
Enticing, right?
Anyways, after getting the ProDesk and the GT635, I only had $10 left, and I had to choose between the SSD or another stick of RAM. I ended up choosing the RAM, largely because 8GB of RAM really isn't enough nowadays, especially if you're going to be running Windows 10 or 11, and any SSD you're going to find for $10 isn't going to have a lot of capacity and likely won't be very good. Now, we evaluated our builds in a few different ways: usability, performance, and upgradability. When it came to daily usage, the Windows 10 experience was actually pretty good. The system didn't really slow down while browsing the internet or setting up software, and if you're not doing any high performance tasks, this PC is more than enough. It also takes about a minute and a half to boot into Windows, but once you got in, everything was smooth sailing. The hard drive was definitely the bottleneck in this aspect, but I'd rather have a slow 500GB hard drive than a fast 128GB SSD. But what about the performance? Well, I wanted to push the 635 as hard as possible, so I chose not to prioritize temperature and overclocked it to plus 119 on the core and plus 183 on the memory. I started out in some synthetic tests, and in Cinebench R23, the 4130 got a multi-core score of 1965, which isn't great, but is a little faster than other runs I found online. I also ran 3D Mark to test out the 635, and with the overclock applied, it got a time spy score of 428 and a graphics score of 377. So how does that translate into in-game performance? We ended up testing out a few different games, and the system was pretty well balanced. Every game you see here was ran in 720p with the lowest settings possible. I'm sure that in some of these you probably could have pulled off 1080p, but my capture card only goes up to 720p, so we're stuck with that. In CSGO, we got an average frame rate of 71, and we're limited by the GPU. CSGO was known for being more CPU than GPU intensive, but not in our case, as the 635 isn't exactly a powerful card. Valorant, on the other hand, ran great. The game will never be as good as CSGO, but its performance was a lot better. I didn't record the average frame rate, but I'd estimate it to be about 110 FPS. They didn't do a lot right when making this game, but they definitely optimized it well. GTA 5 didn't quite crack the 100 FPS mark, but did maintain a smooth 60. Like all the other games, I ran it in 720p with the lowest settings, and it was stable and essentially flawless. The game also heavily stressed the system, and maxed out the poor i3 and 635, and even used 8 gigs of memory. Rainbow Six Siege was up next, and with the aforementioned settings and a render scale of 50%, got an average frame rate of 63 FPS. The GPU was pinned at 100% and the CPU was at about 80. Siege was pushing our PC as hard as possible. The game did look kinda blurry due to the low render scale, and there was some screen tearing, but I was actually able to get a kill, so I'm counting this one as a win. But I wanted to try out some more esports titles for all the prodigies out there and hopped into some Rocket League. This one actually kind of surprised me. I mean, sure, the game isn't hard to run, but the frame rate was essentially pinned at 60 FPS. Once again, this was all with the lowest settings, but there was performance left on the table and you could definitely increase the settings or resolution a bit. However, my favorite vehicle-based game is definitely Beamng Drive. I've put way too many hours into that game, and it is a pretty demanding title, but it did better than I expected and ended up getting an average frame rate of 43 FPS. The 635 saw significantly higher utilization than the 4130, but this game is known for heavily stressing your GPU. Now, this one is kind of a throwaway because it is an older game, but Left 4 Dead 2 ran great. I actually ran the high settings for this game, and it was stable, yielding an average frame rate of 120 FPS. I mean, especially in this resolution, that was to be expected, but it felt nice being able to run a game with the high settings for once. Far Cry 4 didn't do quite as well, but was honestly still more than enough. All you really need is a consistent 30 FPS to enjoy most games like this, and it was able to pull it off with an average frame rate of 40. I used the low preset for this one, so you might have been able to push things a little bit lower, but I was content with how it looked and how it performed. The last game I tested was PUBG. Not to end on a bad note or anything, but this was far from an ideal experience. The CPU was pinned at 100%, the GPU was at about 90, and it ate up 8 gigs of RAM. The game didn't run great, it started and froze, and with your settings down this far, I imagine it'd be pretty hard to have a competitive experience. Upcycle Tech definitely had better performance metrics than I, but I beat him in one aspect, upgradability. Not to spoil his video too much, but he ended up buying a laptop, and you can't upgrade much on a laptop. But this abused ProDesk, you can do anything to it. I'll buy this eventually, I keep putting it off, but you can actually throw a 4970 in this thing, which is still a very capable CPU. So if given another chance, what would I have changed? Honestly, not much. For $50, this is a pretty decent system. If I had to daily drive this PC, I think I'd first buy a better graphics card, and eventually I'd try to snag a cheap SSD off of eBay. And I didn't mention this, but the PC had some stability issues. I think it's likely due to the overclock, but I wanted to squeeze out every last drop of performance. I've also linked Upcycle Tech's video in the description, so go check it out, and let me know who you think won. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider leaving a like or subscribing, because it genuinely helps me out. If you want to join the community, there's a link to the official Knight Discord server in the description, alongside a few donation methods that directly support the channel. If you have any questions or related comments, then leave them below and I'll be sure to respond to them. That's about it. Have a great day. Bye.